Hey, welcome to the show. A couple years ago, I asked a friend of mine from a church I was going to at the time how she knew when kind of God or angels directed her to do something. Because she and her cousin, who were good friends and worked together, would often tell me stories about how kind of God guided them to do something, usually to talk to someone who they felt needed someone to listen to them or something like that at the time. And I was like, how do you know the difference between when you're being pushed to do something by God and when it's just your own idea? And they're like, it's generally because you don't really want to do it. There's something you feel like you are supposed to do or you're being asked to do or called to do. Those are all kind of descriptions of the same like internal urge to do something. But there's a part of you that is like, no, why would you want to do that? Why would we do that? I'm not interfering with these people. I'm not going to meddle in someone else's life. I'm just going to worry about myself and keep to my business. And so I started at that point to understand that like there are times where I get pushed to do something and I really don't want to do it. My ego usually makes a big stink about it and is like, no, but the urge keeps coming. And basically until I acknowledge it and do what I'm told, I get to sit here and wait in this sort of waiting room of sorts. So I don't want to make this video, and I know though that if I don't make this video or if I make it and don't post it, something else I'm going to be in this odd loop or this waiting room. I've had this feeling for a while now that I'm in this very interesting, strange period of my life where I'm waiting for all these things. Like some of it's playing out for the financial system. When are they going to flip the switch? When are we going to kind of go and start on this other world? And then I have other things in my personal life where I've been just waiting for things and I'm like waiting around and I'm like, why am I in this waiting? And it's annoying because I end up feeling like this victim that I'm trapped and there should be some kind of action I take to get out of this frustrating situation. Well, what I've kind of come to see is that I'm in this room and there are sometimes there's no doors and sometimes there's only doors that I know are not the way I'm supposed to go, which means the same thing, that I'm in this room and whatever doors are there, if there are any, are not the right ones. So somehow I'm supposed to unlock some door, and maybe this video will unlock this magic door, which would be great. I realize I sound a little insane saying that, so there's just a little bit of setup. If you sense some apprehension in me talking about some of these things, it's because I do not want to make this video. This is life is tough sometimes, and hindsight can be beautiful in the ability to understand lessons years later. You can look back on things that happened decades ago, knowing that they were kind of crappy in the time, and see the kind of like the blessings or what you were protected from or what door opened as a result of it. Hindsight is 2020. It is very difficult for me, I'm sure others, to be in the middle of one of those experiences and trying to at least trust that there will be this wisdom on the other side. Because in the middle of it usually just feels like this sucks. Like, I don't like this. This is unpleasant. Why would I possibly sign up for this? I mean, this is one of the lessons of awakening, is separating this role you're playing in the game from the person who's like the observer or the guy with girl with the joystick thing, because that's easy to grasp like at a theoretical level. And I love to talk about philosophy, and often when you are talking about those topics, you're observing the world from a distance. To be in the middle of your own like avatar's life seeking that wisdom, it's hard, especially when you're in the middle of like an unpleasant experience where all the different parts of you are fighting for their agenda to win. We'll get into that more in a second. I had a jury duty on Monday, so 2 days ago, and I had the summons for a while. I didn't even read it. It just said jury duty. I knew the date, and then I cared about the address. Like the night before, I like looked up the address, and you were supposed to like RSVP and register or whatever. I was like, oh, fortunately that wasn't a problem. So I get there not knowing that it's grand jury duty instead of jury duty. I don't even know if I would have cared if I had, like, I didn't really know I know what the difference is between them, but I didn't know what the difference was as a juror between having grand jury duty and jury duty. So if you are not American, we have this justice system in the US, and citizens are called to serve on juries. There are two kinds. One is a trial jury where there's an actual case with a defendant and a prosecutor or two people suing each other. I don't know if those are jury trials. Anyway, there's two sides, and you kind of hear their arguments and hear their cases and, render a verdict. But not every case gets to that part because, there could be charges brought against somebody and they really have no merit. They're like you just made these up. Like you have nothing that connects this person to this crime. So there's this preliminary process called the grand jury where the prosecution and police officers sort of present their case saying, this is what happened, this is why we pressed these charges, and this is why, we're presenting this case for permission essentially to move forward to this next part of the process. So that thing is quick. Like it only takes 5 minutes in some cases to do this. Like it's short. And so I was picked for grand jury duty. And when I'm sitting there listening to them explain this, so it's a district attorney and the assistant district, the ADA were kind of explaining to us the difference and that this is going to be a 4-month term. We have to go once a month for 4 months. And we're going to hear a whole lot of cases. And she's like, I need some people to volunteer to be some roles on this. And I just knew right away, I was like, oh, I have to be the foreman of this. And sure enough, she says we need someone to volunteer to be foreman, or a person, which is sort of like the leader of it. And I just knew it and I raised my hand. No, and I was like, if somebody else wants to do it, like, no problem. I don't need to do this. I'm just saying if you need me to, I will. And everyone looked at me. They're like, yeah, if you want it, go for it. I was like, I didn't say I wanted it. I just feel like I was. So anyway, I'm now the foreman of this grand jury process, which is interesting. And we, in one afternoon on Monday, the first of the 4 months, heard 43 cases. And they were all over the place. I live in a county that's kind of a suburb of Atlanta, and it's pretty safe and quiet. I was unaware of the crimes that were being committed here. And the foreman of the previous session, the last 4-month term, came and spoke to us before we started, sort of like what lessons did she learn as the foreman that we could learn. And the one thing that she said that really struck out, and she's like, I've lived in this county for a very long time, and I had no idea all the stuff that was going on here. So if you watched any of my other previous videos about living in different dimensions where, two people can occupy the same space, but their lived experiences are very, very different. This was a reality wake-up call for me in that completely. Like, I live in this cute little town. It's very safe. Like, I walk around with my dog all the time. Like, it's all pretty chill. But a bunch of crimes that I heard about in detail were happening, some very close to here. And I'm not like worried about my safety. It's just more that I was oblivious that any of this stuff is happening because like the world I live in, these types of things don't happen. And a lot of heartbreaking stories about like fathers like sexually abusing their children, a bunch of domestic violence things, 2 where like a pregnant woman is beaten by the baby daddy. And I'm like thinking, how can these people live in this world where they think that like this is how people who love you treat you? Like it just must cause so much damage. I'm thinking while I'm listening to these cases, like, how did this happen? And what is really the solution? You're going to send most of the criminals were men, some were female, but you're going to send these people to jail. Is that going to undo all of these wounds and this damage? And, it's a very punitive system. Like you commit a crime, like let's say you grow up in this completely broken home. You have no idea what honor and integrity and love feel like. They're not part of your life. You see people around you committing crimes, so that's just your normal world. So you do this as well, partly to be accepted by the criminals who are the only people around, right? And so you do this, and that's not always the case, but that could happen. And then how does that person like live any differently? You even have people who grew up in perfectly happy families, perfectly functional parts of society. They had friends, they had teachers who cared, and they still make mistakes. This system here, you even have people who are completely honorable and good in every way, and they just one day or one night like do something stupid, and now they're charged with a felony, right? And so like what is the way through for that? There's this concept in South Africa called Ubuntu, where instead of like throwing the book at people and saying you committed the crime, you got to do the time. The whole village like surrounds the person who made the mistake, and they tell them all of these wonderful qualities they have, and they relive very happy memories, and they kind of work through whatever was behind this mistake to kind of address it from a loving, accepting, compassionate perspective. And the justice system we have here is nothing like that at all. And as we kind of prepare for this 5D, 3D ascension, I think I'm being put in this situation with this grand jury thing to hear all of these cases just to see that like throwing all these people in jail is just going to create these generational loops where, you're a felon, you've gone to jail, you get out of jail, now society labels you as like this leper practically. It's very difficult to get employment. They're scared to be your friend. And you end up having to just hang out with other criminals because no one else will accept you. And like, is that really the solution to situations where broken people do dumb things? Like, no. But that's not what this video is about. As I was listening to these very sad stories, I separately in my life am being taught this lesson about how I made a video, they taught this lesson about how we signed up for all these experiences, all these crappy things that you've been through, all these difficult, painful, traumatic, grief, heartbreaking things. Like the idea that we signed up for this is hard to grasp sometimes, particularly when you're in the moment. And when you go through a heartbreaking situation, like where like let's say you have a dog, right, who you love completely, and you know that this dog is probably not going to outlive you, and you go through that grief, there's a brief point in time where you wonder, like, was it worth it? Like, I am so sad missing this dog right now. Should I have just saved myself this horrible experience of having to suffer through them dying? I didn't have to get the dog in the first place. And a lot of us, I went through the death of a dog, and I had a beagle named Alabama who was with me for 15 years. She was a great love of my life. When she died back in 2019, I had a really hard time with it. And I probably wasn't going to get another dog. I was married back then, and my ex-husband couldn't stand the silence, so he got another dog pretty quickly, and that dog kind of became his dog because I was like, I'm not going back there. And I did get a dog last fall, and it was a big deal because it was like finally getting back on the horse after Alabama to have a dog who's primarily, mine. So I'm the sole one to take care of him. It took me a long time to get to that place. And the same thing can happen even with like romantic relationships where, you open your heart and then it gets broken in some way. Sometimes it's because of something that you had happen that was in your control. Sometimes it's something that happened that's outside of your control. And the lesson and what this video is really about is like, how do you walk that path after heartbreaking things so that you don't fall into a cliff? And we're going to talk about a road. There's a right lane, a left lane, and a middle lane. About a year and a half ago, this was a while ago, I started to be inspired to read about this Egyptian goddess named Isis. And I have read more about Isis's story than anyone that I know because it's kind of obscure, doesn't come up much. Up until a couple years ago, I only thought Isis was a terrorist organization. I had a good friend, Tara Pearson, who got a kitten. This was probably like 10 years ago. And she named this adorable little kitten Isis. And at the time, I only associated Isis with, this was like at the peak of the Obama years, I think, when like Isis was a huge thing and on the news all the time. And I'm like, you named your kitten Isis? Like after the terrorist organization? She was like, what are you talking about? There's a terrorist organization? And I was like, how can you not know that? Like it's on. And she was like, well, I named it after this goddess. How can you not know that? And I was like, how interesting. We're good friends and we have very different definitions and interpretations of Isis. So that was my first time I'd ever was aware that there was a goddess named Isis and didn't really think much about it. Years later, I start to be pointed to things about her. And I then dive in deep and I learn the story of Isis and Osiris. They were original, sort of the kind of first generation practically of gods and goddesses who interacted with people. And what's interesting when you read the stories, they were taller than the human subjects that they interacted with. So they were like giants, not like twice as big, but they'd be like 7 feet tall for people back then being maybe 5 feet tall. So substantial difference. They people looked up to the gods literally, and the gods looked down on them. And that was not just simply a metaphorical thing. So anyway, Isis and Osiris, they have 2 siblings, Set and Nephilis. They are the 4 representations of the masculine and the feminine. You have the light and the dark. So you have a quadrant. You have light feminine, dark feminine, light masculine, dark masculine. We'll get into all that stuff another day, because there's a lot of like archetypes and parables about them that we can all apply to our own lives. Very similar to biblical parables. So in this case, though, of Isis and Osiris, they were happily married, like the king and the queen. Everybody loved them. The kingdom was abundant. Osiris is sort of known as like this god of like fertility and abundance, and that in this agrarian society, that was part of like crops and rain coming and being able to grow food, so everybody was healthy and could eat. And his brother Set was more of a barbarian warrior type who lived off in this sort of barren, the bush in Africa, because they all lived in Egypt. And he was more brutal, hunter, and very jealous. But he was a dark energy, a lot of fear. I mean, he was killing, there was a lot of dark energy in him. He's the dark masculine, right? And he's very jealous of Osiris and plots to kill him. And Osiris, who's just love and light, pretty oblivious to this, doesn't think that it's a big deal, and that if he just loves his brother more, that everything will be fine. And so one day, Isis is out of town, and Set sees this as his opportunity, because Isis is a high priestess. She's very aware of things and she picks up on things, but Osiris can be very blinded by assuming the best in people and wanting to believe that everyone is great. Isis was just a little bit more, she could read energy differently. So anyway, she's out of town, and Set throws this party. And for this party, he has made it's called a sarcophagus, which is like an Egyptian casket looking thing, that you see King Tut and whatever in. And it's made to fit Osiris's body perfectly. But Osiris doesn't know this. He goes to the party, and this very elaborate, we'll call it a wooden box, is there. It's like intricately decorated. So Set, and even in his barbarism, is very talented, like woodworker, crafter, like does things with his hands. So he's not all bad, right? He's just the dark masculine. And there's like hey, well, we have a special prize for anybody who can fit in this box perfectly. And it's like, all right, well, let's try it all on. It's like the Cinderella story. Well, who does the glass slipper fit perfectly? And Osiris is like, well, I'll get in there. And he goes and he gets in this box, and Set's dudes come and close the box, and they seal it and they wrap it up, and he's trapped in this box. And they throw the box into a river and weigh it down, and he drowns. And Isis finds out about this. She's like heartbroken and searches, but they can't find this wooden box. And eventually it ends up like downriver, and it gets stuck in a tree, and the tree grows around it. These stories like play out over a long time. This tree grows around it completely, and some rich person cuts down this tree and builds like a statue thing in their house. Isis eventually finds this box, but she's like, can't get into it. So there's this whole kind of side story. She ends up eventually getting to this box, opening it up, and Osiris is almost dead, but not quite. These are gods. Remember, they don't necessarily follow our human rules, but with body stuff. So, but she brings him back to life because she's this high priestess and restores him. And she's like, oh, thank God. And she has to leave him, though, because she's got to go get her sister for some reason. I forget what the reason was. And so but she hides him in like a cave. But while she's gone, Set, the brother, finds out about this, and he goes and gets Osiris, and he cuts him up into lots of little pieces, scatters the pieces all around the globe, and he's dead again. And Isis is heartbroken and begins this life of searching. And she's searching every inch of the globe to find these pieces, finds them all, puts them back together. There's a piece missing. We'll save that for another day. But she can't bring him back to life. Like her power, her magic is not strong enough. She only has light magic. She's only full of love, and that isn't enough to counter the death. And so she begins this grieving period where she wanders the earth, she cuts all her hair off, rubs dirt all over herself, like, and basically just spends a long time mourning and being this perpetual victim and grieving and just living in this state of absolute sadness. Now Osiris, though, he can't be brought back to life, and the gods kind of meet in the ether, like in the spirit world, and they just it's decided that Osiris is dead and he has to go and live in the underworld, and he'll be the god of the underworld, which when we hear that sounds like hell or some sort of dark place. That's not necessarily the case. It could be heaven. I mean, it's just could be the next world. If you think about these dimensions that we ascend, because he was a good man and he didn't do any harm that resulted in him like having to go to quote hell or play out a karmic debt. He may have just ascended to 5D, but for whatever reason couldn't get back here. Now his son Horus was born, so this plays out. But what the point that I want to bring up for this Isis story is that there's this like tragic love story between Isis and Osiris where, this love they have is taken from them and no magic can fix it. Like no matter what Isis does, she cannot bring him back. So it's like, it feels very unfair. Like life sucks, like life is cruel. And what's strange about this story is like, I'm trying my best. If I really fully go deep into that story and talk about how she felt, I will start sobbing hysterically. It's strange. And what I have since found out is that the two of them have played more parts in this Earth School movie. And when I read about those stories or watch some of those movies, I immediately connect the two. I'm like, this is the same story. It's the same energy. It's the same, this sucks. These two lovers found each other. It was beautiful, but then something ripped them apart that feels tragic. The Romeo and Juliet story, Titanic, you've got Rose Dawson who is engaged to this guy who's a jerk and doesn't love her at all. And she meets Jack on this amazing sort of trip, and they fall in love and they find each other, and then he dies, right? Blood Diamond is even another movie I've seen over and over where, you have Maddie Bowen. She's this journalist traveling the world trying to avoid her fear of love. Her sisters have all like found that, and she feels like that's not her path, most likely out of fear. Then she's on this adventure. She meets Danny Archer. I love me some Danny Archer. She meets Danny Archer. He's this very damaged sort of soldier from Rhodesia who has endured these horrific tragedies as a child. His parents were brutally murdered when he was like 10 years old. He has to join the army just to survive and kills all these people and does all these horrific things out of survival. And she sort of sees the humanity in this and loves him anyway. And then he dies, right? Like, so it's like this same tragic story keeps playing out over and over. And when I kind of started to make these connections, I asked my guides, I'm like, because Isis is one of my spirit guides. I'm like, why would you keep putting yourself through this? Like, why do you keep reliving this tragic story over and over? It's like, I wouldn't want to do that. It just seems like torture. And it brings up this question, which is really what this video is about, which is if you get to experience something beautiful like the love between Isis and Osiris, and then it is taken from you and you are left heartbroken, the question becomes, was it worth it? Like, if you could go back and know what you know about that situation and how it's going to end, would you choose to not do it to avoid the pain? And so part of my own journey on this, in this video, is part of it, is I had to go back through all the kind of times in my life where I was truly heartbroken. I had a really significant heartbreak when I was like 25. And now that's far enough away that like mostly detached from all that pain or whatever. And I was asked, like, all right, if you could just erase that story from your life and never having gone through it. And it was very Osiris and Isis, like it just seemed very unfair. There was nothing I could do about it. It sucked. Would I undo it? Like if I could wipe it completely. And it was a great question because I would go back and forth and be like, I don't know if it was worth it. Like I was stuck in this grief cycle for a while. Like if I hadn't been stuck there, other opportunity, other doors would have opened. I might have had a very different life. And then it's like, all right, so I had another one when I was like late 20s, almost 30. And like, well, you could erase that one too. And if you erase that one, how many choices did you make because of that wouldn't have happened? So like most of the things in my current reality, like wouldn't have happened if I went back and undid every choice that led to some kind of heartbreak. And so I'm like, I don't even know what my life would be like. So it's really hard to say that you would eagerly or willingly erase all of those because there's so many butterfly effect things that are part of your life that you wouldn't have. Like if you have, like in my case, my son wouldn't be my son, I don't think, if I had followed all these different paths and made different choices. Like I wouldn't have ended up in the situation where he became part of my life. So to go back and undo everything is tricky. But even let's forget that. It's like, is there no value in experiencing these difficult emotions? And it's like, well, it sucks when you're experiencing them, but when you're on the other side of something like grief, you develop this compassion for other people who are going through that. And let's go back to jury duty for a second. Like, imagine you have a jury full of people who are very compassionate and understanding. The way that jury discussion would play out, in my opinion, would be different than if you had a bunch of principled but not experienced people who were like, the law is the law. If you break the law, you got to pay, without any of this Ubuntu compassion in there saying, you know what? Sending this person to jail probably is not going to be the help that they need. What are the other options we have that could possibly help, move this situation forward so it doesn't play out again? We're not back in court 5 years from now with this same guy creating the same crime because it's just all he knows how to do. And so it becomes this question of like, now you have this compassion that you can be using to serve other people, which you wouldn't have had if you lived in this super sheltered box where no bad thing ever happened to you. You would never develop that compassion because the compassion isn't theoretical. Like you got to feel compassionate. Like you can't pretend to be compassionate. You can lie and act like you are, but inside whether you are truly empathetic to someone's situation because you have been there, you have felt those emotions. All right, now we're going to talk about this road. So let's say you are on the other side of heartbreak and you've been through a lot of things. So I got a whole list of these. So this was part of my exercise for this last couple of days, was like, all right, list them all out and decide how you felt in each one of these. And if you decide to not erase them and they're still part of your story, looking forward, what are your choices for how to proceed should another situation of the same type come up again? And this could be romantic relationships. This could be like parenting things. This could be and entrepreneurship. Like your entrepreneurs, we fail a lot of businesses. Like to get back up and start another one after you've had several fail, like it's not all that different than what I'm talking about here. It's like finding the courage to get back on the horse when you have been knocked off that horse and maybe the last one really felt like you got punched in the face and you're like, why would I ever do this again? So you're presented with a road and there are 3 paths. The left path is where you can just be like, I'm done. I'm tapping out, doors closed, we're not playing anymore. I am going to go wander the earth like Isis. I'm going to go sail off on a boat. I'm going to go live in a cabin on the top of a mountain. I'm going to just check out and be done. And you know what? Nothing will ever hurt you if you do not allow anything to hurt you. And you can live this life of isolation and protection. Now, if you're a parent and your kid comes to you after a heartbreaking situation and says, I think I'm just going to check out and go live by myself in a cave because life is hard, would you want your child to pursue that path? So keep that in mind, that like when you're tempted to do something, I sometimes will ask myself, if I were my parent seeing me doing this, like, would I encourage this path? Okay, that's the left side. It's basically what Osiris did. He went and checked out, lived in the underworld, and was done. So it's interesting. When you hear about all these Egyptian gods and goddesses and archangels who are spirit guides, Osiris is never on that list. Like, he's not, I don't think he's part of this whole, like, I'm here helping Team Earth. Like, he's either trapped somewhere else or he's checked out. He's gone. And I think partly to help us learn that that is a pathway you can choose. You can tap out of the game, but then you will, now we'll talk about, then you miss out. Like, you're done. You will never experience all of the good things because you have checked out. Then there's the other side, the right side. This is the path Isis walked, which is you are grieving all the time. You are living in these heartbreaks. You are upset that everyone is out. Everything's going to break your heart, and you feel this pain. Everything reminds you of this pain. And when any new thing comes along, you're like, assume it's going to be painful, and you manifest that pain. And you relive this, like, Romeo and Juliet tragedy type thing, or you relive this heartbreak situation over and over, and it becomes this loop. And the reason why that happens is that the minute something in Isis recognizes Osiris, she's like, oh, I found him. Oh my God. And now she has to play out this whole tragedy thing. And so that's sort of like living in the emotion forever and manifesting it over and over. If you have any situation in your life where you're like, the same thing keeps happening to me, this same loop. I mean, I have other friends who will tell me about they have the same, like, type of relationship thing play out over and over. They're like, it's because they're choosing to identify with that fear and saying, this is what always happens to me. This is the kind of situation I'm worth, or, this is what I deserve. And they keep living this Isis path of the grief being front and center, the heartbreak being front and center, and living, like, kind of torturing the poor ego who just wants to protect them from this heartbreak. All right, so neither of those are desirable paths. One is you're totally checking out. One is you're constantly crying and feeling like the victim all the time. What is this middle path? And this is, I'm not going to claim to have mastered this at all. I'm figuring this out as I go along, and this video, just to be perfectly clear, I'm not an expert in this. This is me trying to figure it out and trying to unlock some door by this middle road. Okay, so the middle road. You're not closed off. You have to be open. But you're also not dumb like Osiris and just getting in the box when it's possible you are going to be sent another trial, another test from the universe to see if you'll just get in the box without even thinking about it. So this is I'm also going to make an aside here. This is my official statement to my angel guides that I am no longer available for any more trials in this particular lane. They know what lane I'm talking about, and I'm not doing it anymore. Now, it doesn't mean that I won't entertain any new scripts, but I'm not going to play the part in the Isis movie of, like, this tragedy, heartbreak shit anymore. I'm done with it. If there is because this is what happens when you're faced in this situation, is that the ego identifies a familiar pattern and is like, this situation looks like these other situations. Run. Like, don't fucking go and open that box. Like, don't get in that situation. Don't get in the box. Like, you know better. Like, we have learned this story from experience that when it smells like a carrot, it's a carrot. Then the soul, the heart, though, is like, well, what if this time it's different? I mean, what if it's all been a Goldilocks story, and, like, the first one was too hot, the next one was too cold, but then the one that comes along eventually will be just right. Like, if you are closed off, you will never experience the perfect Goldilocks porridge, whatever. So you can only know it if it's right by tasting it. And the ego, so my ego is like an actuary, right? And what it does is it takes all of the data that we have about every other previous experience, and it runs the numbers. And it's like, well, in every previous situation, 100% of the time, it ended this way. So I would not underwrite the policy that this is some, all of a sudden now, law of contrast is kicking in, it's some magical other side. And so the ego and the heart go back and forth about, like, do we go in or do we not go in? Then you go back and forth. And the consciousness driving the car feels torn. It's like this ping pong game. You're like, what? I don't know what to do. And it becomes very stressful and tiring. And so this is why this middle road is necessary, because the ego is going to be lobbying for one side and the heart's going to be lobbying for the other side. And if you don't figure out how to take control of this, you're stuck in this annoying ping pong game that, quite honestly, it's like a pendulum. And sometimes the only way to stop a pendulum is to get off the pendulum and take away the energy of the pendulum. And that's where this middle road is to be able to look at a situation and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this is the perfect porridge bowl, but I'm not really so sure. So instead of like immediately assuming it is and being all in and recognizing this familiar energy, you play the discerned Osiris role, and you don't just get in the box, because you know that not every person that is going to be sent into your life is there to be part of your golden timeline. Sometimes people are sent into your life to teach lessons. A lot of people are sent in your life to teach lessons, and those lessons are necessary. I am now just telling my spirit guides, like, I'm onto this. So I'm not going to get on the lesson train anymore. You can try. You can send me some, and I will read the scripts, and I will see, all right, I'm not closed off. I'm not going to say no to, shut the doors. But there will be this concept of discernment. And so in your own life, this is kind of the same thing with a dog. Like, that's a little trickier. But I had to make the conscious decision that, yes, I'm going to get a new dog. I love him. He's amazing. Wonderful. Shadow is his name. And I didn't rush into that. I didn't immediately, after losing Alabama, try to mask the pain with some kind of replacement dog. Like, I couldn't do that. That wasn't my journey. I had to wait until I was ready to embrace the fact that, I was going to have this hopefully 15-year relationship with Shadow, and that he's sorry, you see me moving around. He's high maintenance a little bit. And that I'm ready to do it. And I went into that fully aware. It wasn't like an impulsive decision. A lot of the Isis decisions are reactive and impulsive and done like out of clingy neediness. And so if I had gotten a dog, just was me personally, I'm not being critical of how it was handled in my family. I'm just saying I couldn't do it, because for me to get a dog right away would have felt like I was numbing that pain with a replacement, and that wasn't the right way for me to do it. So my point is, this type of this could happen with businesses too. Like, sometimes if you have a failed business, the temptation is to start another one right away, to just forget about the other one, the failed one. But sometimes you need to just chill and really think about what's important to you before you kind of get back on the horse again. So this applies to a lot of facets of life. It's not just certain kinds of relationships, but the idea is that you can avoid to get on, you can say, I'm done, I'm tapping out, or you can like use every opportunity, every possible lead to fill this void and numb yourself with a replacement, or you can choose this middle path, which is to be more thoughtful and discerning and learn how to identify which opportunities are real and which ones are tests that the game is sending you to see how much you've progressed. And when the game sends you a test, a trial, you will be presented with those three options, the three roads. You can take the left road and you can say, no, I'm not going to talk to him. I'm done. I'm tapping out. You can take the right road, which is like you're jumping in without even thinking about it and, being almost naively optimistic that every opportunity is a good opportunity. And then there's this middle road where you proceed, but cautiously, and you protect your own energy by not being too quick to assume that your brother's not trying to kill you in the case of Osiris, right? Like, don't just get in that box without really thinking about who is getting me in this box, and is this box a lesson I'm supposed to learn? And for many of you, you're going to get in that box. You're going to go through it, and then you're going to remember this video after the fact and be like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have gotten in that box, but now I know. And so now you have the wisdom, now you have the experience that the next time somebody invites you to go get in this box, you're like, I'm going to just watch for a second and be the observer and not be rude and yell and be like, no, I'm not, put up this resistance. Just don't have to react and be all in, getting in the box right away. So that to me is the middle road. You're not closing off possibility, but you're not blindly jumping in without really thinking about it. You are traveling this discernment path where you make thoughtful choices, leveraging the experience and lessons you've learned, knowing that that perfect bowl of porridge is there for whatever it is your dream is about, that exists, but you are probably going to be presented with porridge that's too cold and porridge that's too hot. And you can eat all the porridge you want, but like, why eat the porridge you don't want? Like, why eat the one you don't, that is too hot? Like, you're going to burn your mouth. Like, you don't have to eat that one. Just wait for the right one. And this can be difficult to do in the time. So remember, this is me to myself. Like, if you're in this situation again where you have to make these choices, just realize that there are 3 roads, and the left road and the right road are traps. You will be presented with this lesson over and over until you learn how to, in the moment, pick the middle road. So, all right. See you in the next one.